Space practice is the exact opposite of cramming. When you cram, you study for one long session just before an exam. Studying this way without any review at all, you're likely to forget almost all of the material you initially studied within a year. When you space your learning, you take the same amount of study time and spread it out across a much longer period. Amazingly, doing it this way, that same amount of study time will produce a more long-lasting memory. After initially learning some new information, leave it a day or two before revisiting and reviewing that information. Review it again a second time 4 to 5 days later, and then keep repeating this process of review, but leaving increasingly larger intervals of time. Increasing spacing between study sessions enhances learning and leads to better long-term retention. Intervals should be as long as is necessary for the information to be difficult but not impossible to learn, i.e. each interval should be at the limits of your memory. In your space review sessions, use retrieval practice rather than simply rereading. This way, you'll master material you never thought you could learn. Space practice is one of the most studied areas in the entire history of experimental research on learning, and the evidence for its benefits is overwhelming. In 2009, for example, a researcher split students into two groups. The first group studied some information 8 times in one day and were then assessed on how much they could remember a few days later. The second group studied the same material again for 8 times but over 4 days rather than 1. The experimental group remembered almost 40% more of the material than the first group, and the only thing they did differently was to space their study over 4 days rather than 1. We know through research like this that space practice works, but why? There are a number of reasons why it works so effectively. And one is that every time you restudy material that you've nearly forgotten, you not only make the pathway to that material stronger in your brain, but you also relearn it in a slightly different way to the time when you first studied it, and this provides more pathways to that information, making it more recallable in the future. Give it a try.